If it looks like I've been crying, it's because I have. I've been bawling my eyes out because of these guys right here. I've got 2 large onions all sliced up and ready to go. We're gonna do something a little out of the box today. We're gonna make some really sweet, delectable caramelized onions, but we're gonna put those on the tiny little pie crust. So we're gonna make like little caramelized onion galettes, like tiny little mini flat pies. They're gonna be so cute and so amazingly delicious. Just trust me on this, okay? No one ever thinks of onions as being sweet or really, really yummy. This is gonna totally change your perspective, I promise. I've got a large heavy bottom saucepan right here, heating over medium-high heat, and I'm gonna add 2 tablespoons of olive oil right here. And I wanna get the olive oil really nice and hot. And I wanna start to char and sizzle my onions and really start to render them down. Now I know this looks like a lot of onions, but it really, truly isn't. Onions are kind of like greens. Whenever they cook, they emit a lot of liquid and they kind of like shrivel down to almost nothing, really. So I have these in slices instead of being chopped or minced or anything because I like the texture and the consistency. And since this is going to be the star of a dish, it needs to have a little bit more body to it. Y'all excuse me, I'm not kidding. These are really super potent. They're really good. The stronger they are, the sweeter they can be. So here we go into the pan. I'm not wasting any time. I'm getting all of the onions right in there. Just like that. I wasn't kidding. Onions will get you, okay? Everyone asks, is there a trick to cutting onions where they won't make you cry? Yeah, cut them really fast. That's the truth. Cut them really fast. Okay, so the heat's still set on medium-high. I've got my onions working here, and I just want to add a pinch of salt, so maybe half a teaspoon of salt right over the onions, and this is going to help draw some of the moisture out and help to get them caramelizing a lot faster. So give it a good stir. And you're gonna see a lot of the slices kind of stuck together in those half circles. Try and break them up because we wanna get the strands separated. It's been about 7 minutes and a lot of the liquid has already evaporated away from the onions and they're starting to stick just a little bit. So this is when I wanna turn the heat all the way down to medium-low and season them up. So these onions, they're going to be super tender. There's not gonna be like really any bite to them. But I did want to like kind of save the integrity of the shape of the onion so that way they're not completely cooked down to where they would dissolve. So this is a perfect point to lower the heat and add in my seasonings. So what I'm going to do is add a tablespoon and a half of my gunpowder seasoning because I want to make it kind of spicy. You know what? We'll start with just a tablespoon. I might add half later. It's got all of the seasonings in there to make it savory and sweet and a little bit spicy. Okay. Now to add to the browning factor, I'm going to add 1 tablespoon of brown sugar. Now the pastry crust that I'm going to put this in is a little bit sweet. It's the same crust that I'm going to use for my apple pies. So it's going to be really good. The balance is going to be fantastic between the spice of the gunpowder and the sweetness of the pastry crust. And if you don't want to put this in like a little tartlet like I'm going to do, that's fine. You can actually go ahead and just kind of continue to cook them very slowly. And they make excellent toppings for hot dogs or sausage po' boys or even hamburgers. I mean, it's fantastic. My guy comes in and he just can't stop eating them. He eats them like candy, like right out of the skillet. Seriously, he can't get enough. So it was his idea to come up with like little onion tartlets and ask me if I would make them for him. And I was like, you know what? That sounds like a really good experiment. Challenge accepted. Now I want these to stew for just a moment. So I'm going to go ahead and put in my little 2-ounce cup right here, about 2 tablespoons of water. Just like that. So since we lowered the heat, it's going to take a little bit longer for the liquid to cook out and for us to get that nice kind of jam-like consistency. And I just want to let these guys go for maybe another 5 minutes. We'll see. It's been 7 minutes, and it's a really good thing that we didn't add that extra half tablespoon of gunpowder spice to the onions because as things cook down, the flavors really, really start to concentrate. So remember, you can always add more, but you can't take away. This is a perfect example. The onions, as you saw earlier, was in like a really big pot. The whole thing was covered and it was actually kind of stacked pretty deep. Look at what they cooked down to. I mean, they cook down to hardly anything. They really shrink up. They give off a lot of liquid, and that really absorbs all of the flavor and the seasonings that you put in it. So giving it one more taste before we pull it from the heat. This is perfect. Okay. I'm gonna turn the heat off. They're done. And if you want to use them to top off your hamburgers or your hot dogs or your sandwiches or anything at all, this is a great time to pull them, set them aside, let them cool a bit, and then have at it. Do what you will. And for those of you who are more adventurous, follow me for the next step. Continuing on from those beautiful caramelized onions that we made on the stove just a minute ago, here they are in this bowl. It's the perfect combination of spicy and sweet and savory. They're just amazing. I mean, there's no wonder that you can eat these like candy. They're so underrated. You have to try this. Okay, setting those aside so they can continue to sweeten up in their own way. I'm going to take my pastry dough here that I made earlier today, and you can find my recipe for the perfect pastry crust here at Kitchen Bravo, so be sure to subscribe. And I'm only going to use half of the pastry crust because, like I said, I'm going to make something else with the rest of it, but I'm just going to make like some little like miniature galettes. And a galette is kind of like a free-form pie. There's really no, there's no pie tin to it or anything like that. So what I'm going to do is just use my ring mold right here, my 3-inch ring mold, to cut out little circles and put like a dollop of the onions right there into the center. You'll see what I'm saying here in a second. So I take my pastry crust and I cut it in half and reserve the other half for another use. This goes back in the fridge. Okay, I'm going to get a little bit of flour and just dust my work surface here. I'm working rather quickly because the pastry crust has a lot of butter in it and I don't want it to melt. I'm going to work rather quickly, just flouring and rolling. And I want to roll the pastry crust to where it's about 1/4 of an inch thick. Okay, so now that my pastry crust is rolled out, it doesn't have to be perfect because, like I said, we're cutting it out. So I want to make sure that my ring mold is floured really well. So to make sure that that happens, I'm just going to give the crust a really light dusting of flour. There we are. Okay. So I'm going to start cutting out little circles. I think we'll start with 8. That sounds pretty good. So I'm going to take the rest of this pastry crust here and set it aside, because you can always like re-smush it and roll it out again to use again. So it's pastry crust. It's awesome. It's versatile. You can reuse it. All right, I have a baking tray right here with my silpat, and I'm going to take my circles and just place them onto my silpat tray. Okay. So I'm going to take my onions now and take probably a tablespoon worth of onions right there and just put it right dead in the center. Okay. Now what we're going to do is fold the sides of our little galettes over, just like so. And I'll show you a close-up here in just a moment. As soon as I get this guy all pinched up. There. And it looks kind of like an open-faced dumpling. They're really super cute. There. They're like tiny little appetizer bites. I mean, they're really super cute. See? It's like an open-faced dumpling right there. Awesome. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and do this to all 8 of them. Okay. Cute little tray of 8 little bites. All right. So normally what you could do in a galette is brush it with, a beaten egg and sprinkle a little sugar on it, and that's what I would do for a sweet pie. But these are sweet and savory, and what is a caramelized onion's best friend? Bacon. We're going to put a little bit of bacon love on these guys. So I have in a bowl here a little bit of rendered and melted bacon fat. So I want to very lightly just brush the pastry crust with this bacon fat. And if you're feeling extra generous, go ahead and put just a little sweep of the brush right on top of the onions. There's nothing wrong with that. All right, these guys are brushed and ready to go. I have my oven heated to 425 degrees. These are gonna go in and bake for about 15 minutes until golden brown and aromatic. Here we are 15 minutes later, and some of them have opened up, but that's okay. Sometimes if you're working with like a really small piece of pastry and you know, some good filling, and it's hard to get those little pleats, sometimes they open up. It's okay, nothing to stress about. These guys are going to be perfect little appetizers. They're so golden brown. Let me see if I can pick one up. I'm not burning myself too badly. This guy's gorgeous. Okay, so look at this. Beautifully golden brown. Ah! It held onto the plates, and then let's look at the bottom. Woo! Yep, there's a flash. Ooh! Beautiful flaky crust. I can see it in the sides right here around the edges. All that lamination that we did whenever we make our pastry crust, it really pays off. All right, so these guys are gonna rest here for just a moment, and then we're gonna top them with just a few little things and serve them up. They're gonna be beautiful, gorgeous appetizers here. Let them cool for about 10, and then we're gonna roll on. The tartlets have cooled, and look at this beautiful plate of appealing appetizers. This is incredible. Now, these, you can leave them exactly the way they are, and the flavor is phenomenal, or you can dress them up a little bit. Like I said before, bacon is an onion's best friend. So I can put just a few little bacon crumbles on top of a few of these guys for those who like bacon. Very nice, very nice, very nice. Maybe a couple more right there. That works. All right. Another really great option too is to go with a little bit of goat cheese. If you don't have goat cheese, you can use feta or Havarti or whatever other kind of white cheese that you like. I'm going to go with this guy right here and put a little bit of the goat cheese on top. And to cut that sharpness of it, I go with just a little drizzle of honey, because then you've really got that sweet and spicy and savory all right there in one perfect bite. Look at this guy. Mmm. Wow. Oh my God. As speechless as I am right now, your guests are going to be just as tongue-tied. The pastry is so flaky and so tender, yet really crispy. It's a beautiful, beautiful texture. The onions are sweet and they're soft. The cheese gives it just the right amount of bite, and that honey just glazes it over with the perfect amount of sweetness. To balance off some of that gunpowder spice, which is just mind-blowing. This is an appetizer to die for, guys. Game day, family dinners, Thanksgiving, appetizer, snack, whatever. This is going to be your go-to. Okay. Dear Lord, this is so good. This is Keisha signing off with Kitchen Bravo. Don't fear the onions. I know they make you cry, but you can get your sweet, sweet revenge. Oh my God.